and welcome to A Moment with Dr. Grace. That's Let's Talk Life and Legacy, A Moment with Dr. Grace. Hi, parents, how are you? How have you been? We are here again for a very exciting, educational, and informative session as we continue the conversation in honor of Child's Month. We are still looking at effective parenting through the COVID pandemic. And it's interesting to note that, our last session we had some very brilliant young people, children and adolescents who were on the program, and they gave some very good insight into what has been happening with them. And we felt it was necessary for us to extend the conversation now for our parents. So the question is, how are you coping with these changes during the COVID pandemic? And how is it that you can support your children both psychologically and also with the internet and technological challenges that they may face? We find a lot of questions coming in for that. This afternoon, we have Dr. Pauline Gale Betton, and we also have Miss Anika Williams, who will be joining my co-host and I as we delve into the topic effective parenting during the pandemic. So I'll just pause at this moment and say thank you for being here. You're here to be informed, to be motivated, and to be inspired. We are grateful that you spend these moments with us. Thank you to our regular listeners and our regular participants. We are looking forward to a dynamic, interactive session. We invite you now to invite your family and friends to come on over. Lots of people need to hear what they can do, and we have some very interesting tips to share. So let me take this moment to invite Shauna Kay and Dr. Pearnel Bell to come on out and share with us how have things been, since our last link up, and what are we expecting for this evening?
So, age before beauty.
So I'll go first then. Let me go first.
Well, I'm excited about my upcoming conference next week, Thursday,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
all three of us will be on it. Oh, wow.
Mhm.
With Shauna Kay, you're going to be our main host for the morning program. And Dr. Kelly, you're going to be talking about grief and COVID-19 because we haven't been paying attention to that. So I'm so excited that we are going to be educating the public, and hopefully that we'll have the Ministry of Education as well as the Ministry of Health responding to what they have heard. We have a speaker who will also be delivering a research to look at the effect of the pandemic on children. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And I am glad that I have my co-host with me.
Excellent. And I could not have been more honored to have even been considered for the very prestigious role of hosting such a monumental event. I am also very excited too for this conversation this evening, Dr. Grace. I tell you, I've had so many meltdowns during this COVID crisis. And when I tell you real meltdowns, my family, we have one of those philosophies. My husband actually embraces and endorses the philosophy of public gestures for the common people. And what he centers that around is that we're loyal to the unit. We try to make sure that we keep all the fight and everything inside the unit. But tonight I'm just going to just open up and say, from a vulnerable place, that this pandemic has taken its toll on myself as a parent and even on my mental health. Thank you to Dr. Bell for taking me through that exercise on last Saturday. That was such an eye opener. I've come to recognize that there are some specific things that I will need to do and adjustments that I'll need to make especially during this pandemic, taking on so much and trying to take care of myself. So I am personally looking forward to this conversation, just to sit in and just sit at your feet and the feet of the experts who'll be coming on here to share insights that can help me to just deal as I go through this situation of COVID-19. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to celebrate and affirm you, Shauna, for being vulnerable in sharing. Because so often, and I remember last time when we had a conversation with the children, there was a statement which suggests that we may have gotten the creme de la creme to come on the program, and they would not understand that everyone, doesn't matter what status, it doesn't matter what age, it doesn't matter where your location is, everyone is impacted in a significant way. And for us this afternoon, we are aware, and the topic came about because we are very, very aware that children really depend upon their parents for protection, for support, and for nurturing. And if the parents are not coping, if the parents are having these
Mm-hmm.
challenges, can you imagine, Dr. Bell, what might be happening to the children? Um, Families are hurting because
Mm-hmm.
of the changes, the interactions have changed, everything. And this might sound, well, I mean, we would have discussed or chatted about this in the early stage of the pandemic, when there was a time before the pandemic, students, children could not use telephones, some of them not even in their homes, much more to take them to school.
Mm-hmm.
And now they can't live without it. They can't do anything without it.
Yes.
And how do we help our families and our parents to cope? Dr. Bell, any other insight as to, why this conversation, and what are we expecting this evening?
No, the conversation is very relevant because in my practice, I've been seeing the impact. I'm not imagining now. It's real. And
Hmm.
because I am at the forefront of what I'm seeing in terms of the impact on our children. And so I am delighted that we're going to be having this conversation to educate the public
Yes.
on and parents on what obtains with our kids and what they can do
Mm-hmm.
to mitigate some of the things that are we are now seeing. So I'm really very excited in
Hmm.
having this discussion.
Right. And another thing, Shanaki, I'm not sure, I hope I didn't cut into what you may want to contribute, but another thing, you're talking about your practice, Dr. Bell, and I'm declaring I am not in private practice for mental health issues. No, I mainly focus on the grief, the recovery, and those critical crisis management kind of things. And if I'm not careful, well, whether or not I am careful, I am getting a minimum of 2 calls per day, minimum of 2 calls per day,
Mm-hmm.
needing assistance with families and all kinds of issues. So
Mm-hmm.
this evening, when we want to zero in on the parents, we have a good reason for that, because
Yes.
parents are not managing. Um, I think upfront, I want to share a little bit, some tips, some things that parents can do right up front. But you need to stay with us to the end, because there are some very, very important additional information that will be coming. One of the things that we need to do, parents need to do, is to speak very openly and about how you yourself, you're coping, and how you're managing.
Mm-hmm.
Be real about it. Don't go
Mm-hmm.
with any facade.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Let the children know that you are challenged, but don't take it out on them and say, "Don't you know that I am stressed out too?" No, I can appreciate what you say, what you are saying, Tommy or Jane, and I too, I am not coping as well as I normally would, because it's a different time. All of us are struggling. But if you allow us to work together, we can find a way out. What do you think, Shauna, Dr. Bell?
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the very best things that we can do is show up each day as our authentic self. And the truth is, if we don't, the kids can actually see through us, and they sometimes may not want to hurt our feelings and point it out. But we have to be very authentic in the way that we deal with them, And my husband and I, we talk about this thing, and he's writing his book now. I don't want to do any spoiler alert, but there's this concept that's called balanced vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways that you can be vulnerable, but it does not diminish the authority that you play in the life of your child. And I think once you're able to find that balance, of being vulnerable, but at the same time still being able to share enough so that your child will understand that I'm sharing this with you because to create relationships, so you can understand that when you see certain things happening, this is where mommy is right now. If mommy says that I need space, you can be able to respect that. But at the same time, not coming off as such a crazy person that they may not be able to respect you tomorrow or take you seriously tomorrow when you're trying to discipline them on something else. So that's the balance there, or the delicate balance that we have to find as parents. And I totally and wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying.
So just to piggyback on what Shauna just said, really and truly, vulnerability is really the humanness in us.
Yes.
That's just what it is. It's the humanness in us. And if we put on a pretense to our kids, they're gonna see through that too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to learn. They're going to learn a rigidity that is really not the human side of us. And so
Right.
vulnerability to me is really allowing our children to see that mistakes are wonderful opportunities for us to
To learn.
learn.
Mm-hmm.
If we our feelings, expressing anger, expressing sadness, all of that is just part of the human condition. And that if they embrace those things too, it's a normal life, that when these things come back, they will rebound from it, because they
Yes.
see parents who are resilient and rebounding from a day when they're sad. Mommy is not going to remain sad forever, but this is a moment. As
Mm-hmm.
the Bible said, there's a time for everything, and
Yes.
there's a time to be vulnerable too.
That's right. That's right.
I appreciate the comments, and I think we covered it a little, but I just want to reiterate us making sure that parents would answer children's questions simply and honestly, and talk with them about the highlights of the news. Don't expose them to all the things that are happening around them, and recognize the feelings of the children, and ensure that they understand that you're with them and you're there to support and to protect them. And the modeling, I think, came out with the examples that both of you would have shared. Model the way you want them to behave, and tell them that you are going to be okay if you stick together. But don't let them feel that problems don't happen. Don't let them feel that this is a perfect world and a
Yeah,
perfect space.
I
You
think
can't
that's
make promises,
important.
right? You can't make promises you cannot keep. Only the things that you have control over, you can make a commitment to. And that commitment is
Wow.
whatever it takes, I will be here for you, no matter what.
That's an excellent point. Very excellent point.
All right, so Shauna K, you have already shared a little bit from the mother's perspective, and we really value that. I think we are going to bring in our guest a little early this afternoon, because we want to have the extended conversation with them and to see how best we can utilize the time to give as much support to our parents as possible. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
right
sure
ahead.
thing. Mm-hmm.
So at this
Deep
time, I
dive,
want to, hello?
a deep dive we're going into
Yes,
now.
a very deep dive, my co-host. Thanks, you are always so supportive. So we are going to bring on Dr. Pauline Gale Benton. She is a sociologist, and she's also a school administrator. She's a principal, and so she has to deal with this on a daily basis. So, welcome, Dr. Benton. Would appreciate you. We do appreciate you joining us, and we ask that you show us a little bit more of your head.
That was quick.
So, Dr. Benton, we have been doing research and we have been having conversations, and we noticed that the United Nations webpage that deals with most of the sociological aspects of what's happening, they would indicate that all segments of society, all vulnerable groups, to include parents and children and those who are living in poverty and all of that, all of the various groups are affected some way or another. And I'd like for you to just tell us now a little bit about the dynamics of parent-child relationships during this or any pandemic. What is it that we anticipate, and then we can deal with the how do we treat with those. Thank you. You
Hello,
might be
thanks
muted.
on the platform. It's really, I must say this, that I think the table has turned on me tonight because I usually join the program just to listen, but tonight I'm in another seat. It's really a privilege to be part of this conversation this evening and to share as it relates to, just put a sociological perspective to things. And I will speak from the heart.
Yes.
And so they say, I'll speak from the heart. So let's look at the dynamics and the relations that is now existing. What it was before, what is it now? It's when we talk about sociology and looking at the social aspect, sociology is all about how persons, how we interact with our environment, how we do things together, how we coexist together, how we fight, how we quarrel, how we disagree to agree, things like those. So we are looking at the dynamics and then dynamics. We are thinking change. What has changed? What is changing? And what is left to be changed? It's
Mm.
almost like overnight we went to bed and we wake up like we were having this dream, and you wake up and this thing is here. And we usually, when we were lecturing in sociology, we used to say change is inevitable and it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we want to go back and revisit, because when COVID came, there were a number of things that just came upon us suddenly. But I don't want to lose the focus. I want us to look specifically at the, let's say, parenting the children in the home. Some of us live in big houses, several rooms. Some of us live in maybe smaller dwellings, smaller this, some family size, much larger than others, and so on and so forth. What has changed? What's the dynamic in relation? One of the things we are now seeing, and even as it relates to parenting, we are having persons in the same space, whether it's a mansion or a semi-mansion or no mansion at all. We're
Oh,
having
that's
people
great.
living in the same space for a longer time. Are you accustomed to that? No. Usually, on a normal day, you would get up if you have children, Shanake, and you get them ready, hurriedly out of the house, and you whoops them off to school. School would have served two purposes, as I was discussing in a staff meeting. One is schooling for education, and secondly, a nursery where your children can stay until sometimes 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock when the last one goes. I'm at a private institution, so you never dare close the gate and go and said, parents not come. You stay there you're on your own. No, it's not so. You have to wait. And sometimes that happens. What are we seeing now? Children are confined to their home, in their space, and parents, and we are spending longer time with each other in your space. School, school is now, sorry about that, school is now at home. I usually, at the beginning of the week, I would say to teachers, please remember, we are in everybody's home. So if you have 20 students online in your class, please remember that you are in 20 different homes. So parents are learning too. They're also learning how to live with each other for a longer time. We look at mannerism as something too that has changed, is changing, and is yet to be changed further, to undergo further change. All of that. The way we communicate, parents, the way you communicate with your kids before COVID and during COVID. I was tempted to say after, but it's during, before and during. If you stop for a minute to look at it, it's different. You may not know, but it's different. I don't know if you're buying more food, but we are certainly eating more food.
Yes, we're buying more food.
You're buying more food.
Yes, we are.
All right, you're buying more food. And there are some things as it relates to the dynamic parents that you will not be able to control. You can no longer control the number of times that the refrigerator door is open. You can no
Really?
longer, yes, you can no, especially if you are not there 24/7, because parents still have to go to work, students have to go to school. What we are noticing too, that some workplaces are also transformed into classroom, because some parents are allowed to take their kids with them to work if they can find a nice a room somewhere, or sometimes even to sit at your desk, and they can use their headphone and so on. So while COVID is saying social distance, socially it is also saying, well, mommy, I have to be with you, or daddy, I have to be with you. You cannot leave maybe a 6 or 7 year old on their own. You gone to work and leave them at home to do school. I was talking with a parent in a parent meeting only yesterday, and I said, how do you do? Share with us. So, how do you manage? Both parents work and they have two kids in school, and they are young kids. One is a kinder, one is a grade two. And they just have to do what they have to do. If they can't be there, we have to employ someone to be at home, at least just to be there to supervise, to see to it that the students log into class, and to see to it if there's a challenge with internet and so on and so forth, that has to be there. Prior to COVID, those parents never need to have someone in their home, unless of course they invite guests and so on and so forth. They never need to have someone there to supervise the kids, because the kids would be in school and they would have their arranged pickup time. At my school, we also operate, well, usually, uh, an aftercare program. So after school is done, then the students can move to aftercare. So if it goes up until 5, the parents would come and get their kids. We are not seeing that anymore. Some parents are even afraid to send their children out to school, even when the minister say, okay, you can go, you can do some face to face. But the changes in the relationship. What is happening? Some parents will get closer to their kids because the interaction becomes a little more intense because you have to help with homework. You're in the same space. You're hearing what teacher is saying. And sometimes it is the parents you will hear in the background that will say, you don't hear teacher calling you because students will hide behind their
The attention.
cameras and mute their mic and they know their way of getting around things. Only yesterday a parent shared that the teacher was complaining that she cannot see the child. I cannot see you, Dr. Grace. I can't see you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what was happening? The child used a permanent marker and blot out the camera view,
Wow.
mark it out. So, and the parent couldn't understand why the teacher keeps complaining that I cannot see the child, I
Because the
cannot see
camera
the
was
child.
on.
Yes, that's a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dynamic. That's a change. What are you going to do? These are some
Mm-hmm.
things, Shana K, that you have to be coping with now and adjusting to. Not to mention the little ones who think that, and sometimes they are, way ahead of the parents. You see,
Mm-hmm.
if you give them a laptop, a tablet, or some other device, they don't care how much you pay for it. The cost means nothing to them. They will just touch and touch and touch and they get somewhere. You see,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bell now, she knows how much it costs and she's going to gingerly touching this and gingerly touching that and wondering if I touch this, where it's going to take me. No. The 6 and the 7 and the 8-year-old is not thinking that they're just touching. I hear you now. Maya, shut the laptop. Maya, shut the tablet. They're not mashing it up. They're exploring. As a result of that kind of change, they are step ahead of parents. They are step
Yeah.
ahead of us. And I don't want to introduce the whole concept of reverse socialization in this, but
Mm-hmm.
might as bring this in. I was saving that for another question, but repetition
Yes,
is good.
you can go right ahead
I can go
because
right ahead. All
you're
right, thank you.
merging. Yes, you can go right
So,
ahead with it.
thanks. So we are seeing a different type of socialization taking place. Several. So let's look at reverse socialization as it impacts parents and students. It is reverse because the norm is for the older folks or older people like myself and others to pass, to do the educating and to pass on what is there to be transmitted to the younger ones.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at this change. We are now seeing, particularly when it comes on to technology, it is the younger ones who are doing this kind of socializing. So I'm teaching you, Dr. Grace. I'm 6 years old, but I know to show you how to do that. I know you can get from this point to that. I know you can go into Google Classroom. I know
Mm-hmm.
you can find a way to write on the screen. Students are or they write on screen and don't like the teacher. I tell you I don't like the teacher. I just put it in the chat. And when you call him to me, I just close my mic, turn off
Mm-hmm.
the camera. I am in
Invisible.
Trelawney and you could be in Kingston. You can't get me. You can't do me anything from there. Right, so they do. So you have the reverse socialization, and a lot of that is taking place. Parents and those in the hearing of my voice, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good for us to learn, and if we can learn it from our children,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best way to go. They have been learning from us for a number of years, maybe all their life. So now it's their turn,
Mm-hmm.
your turn to learn from them.
Right.
Some
It is
parents
it
do
is
not
said,
take
Dr.
kindly.
Belly.
Yes.
Not to cut you, but before I forget this statement, it is said that you are never too old to learn and never too
Yes.
young to teach. I was in
And
a situation
exactly.
with a 5-year-old. I think it was a 5-year-old who the teacher was there wondering, how do I get this out to the children and the parents for them to do their assignment? And the child was like, put it in Google Docs. And so it's never too you're never too old to learn and never too young to teach.
Never too
And
young
so
to teach.
we have to share that space now. I really appreciate the value that you brought into this. We are going to ask Dr. Bell to, just, a summary of, for a question, just to see
Sure.
how we can summarize this section before we move into the other on technology. Did you get a chance? I got bumped off a little bit. Did you get a chance to speak to the specific skills that are needed now?
I could just run through those quickly from the heart. So
Okay.
one, in terms of specific skills required now for parenting, one, we have to look at adjusting. We must have to make some adjustments in the way we do things.
So
So
flexibility.
it's different to know, right? So we have to be flexible. The next thing in terms of skill, we must now develop listening skill. We need to learn how to listen to the children. We need to learn to listen to them. We need to also heighten our communication skills.
Mhm.
We need to learn the youth language. We need to learn and understand the youth language. And if we don't, it means we won't be able to communicate with them. We must learn and understand the youth language. It doesn't mean it's going to form a part of your daily thing, what you do, but you want to make sure that you are abreast with what is happening, how they relate to each other, so that when you are in a conversation or listening to a conversation, you are really, okay with what is going on, right? The WhatsApp little, I call them codes, they're not really codes, they shake my head, kiss my teeth, things like those. Kind of know what that means. And we need to understand some of the other things that they use. Because the truth is, everything is changing and language is also so changing. So communication, I would say, is a skill that we need to heighten. We need to look at how we say adjustment, and Dr. Grace said flexible. We need to be flexible, and we must be willing to learn. We must embrace this whole process of reverse socialization that we're learning from the younger ones.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much.
You're
I have a
welcome.
question
Dr.
for Dr.
Bell.
Benton.
Mhm.
Sure, go ahead.
Dr. Benton, prior to the onslaught of COVID-19, and I'm sure that that hasn't changed because COVID is here. But one of the things that we have been cautioned against as parents is the amount of time that our children will spend on devices.
Mhm.
One of the challenges that I personally face in my situation is, of course, they're on the device for school, so it's been used for productive purposes, right? But how do you, as a parent, monitor and prevent that addiction from taking place, whereby even after school is over, they're trying to spend time on the same device for entertainment purposes? And there was a stigma associated with that, as I said earlier. How do you manage that in a way? I understand that you want to be adaptable to the changes that are happening, but how do you manage that when you wouldn't have wanted your child to be having that much screen time?
Okay. Thanks for that question. Very useful and give way for discussion. But here it is again, as a parent, where you have to step in. I talk about heightening your communication skill.
Mhm.
And I would also want to mention, instead of having arguments with your kids, go for discussions. go for discussions instead of arguing. Because when you're arguing, it's just one person most time and you just laying down the thing. So you're going to have some conversations with them and there must be some rules. We can't operate a business as a family in in the home. That's a business, and you have to have managers in there. So we must manage skillfully what goes on there, right? In the school system, we give the screen break, the regular screen break, and there is a day well, at my school where I'm at, there's a day or two in the week that we do asynchronous learning. The child can be on, the teacher doesn't necessarily have to be there, and there are regular screen break. But what we find out, a child becomes tired when the activity is very structured, like in a teaching and learning thing. But once that structured thing, they will get tired. But when they're on their own, they seem that they'll never get tired. They'll just play from 6 o'clock in the
Yes.
evening until maybe 11, 12 o'clock at night when they should be sleeping. So there must be some rules that the parents or the adults in the household are going to put in place to say, there is time for this. And one of the things too with the change in the dynamics of the relationship too is that everybody in the household is our own device. So you're in the same household, but you're not talking to each other because you're talking to somebody in Australia or in another parish or somewhere. Everybody has their own device. So you may eat your dinner and your thing and you go lie down somewhere and you're talking and you in the living room one is there, but you're just doing your own thing.
So
But
what
there
I'm
must
hearing
be
you,
some rules there.
so what I'm hearing you to say is that the onus is on me to
Yes.
manage and monitor the
Yes.
time that they spend on the devices. If we want to, cut back on that, we are the ones who have to regulate it. But it should be through a discussion rather than a dictatorship.
Rather than a dictatorship, make it be a discussion. So it becomes now a win-win situation because I would have a part in that discussion.
Got you.
Right.
Got you.
So you
That's a
might
great
be
point.
saying, right, you could be saying, well, it's 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, you shut this off. But you could have an arrangement. The child might say, okay, I think I need 15 minutes more. So instead of giving me 9 o'clock, let's go to 9:15. And you could, you meet each other, kind of make the play feel a little better. And sometimes when you allow them to be a part of, of the discussion, a part of the rulemaking, they become more cooperative. Because you could step back and say, hey, remember, you're the one who said 9:15, not me. Right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good.
So,
Very good. Dr. Bell.
Oh, a very interesting conversation, Dr. Benton. What I learned from you is that change is the constant, and that during this pandemic, we have to recognize that change is the constant, and that some of our parenting strategies have to become quite flexible. We have to make some adjustments, develop keen listening skills, heighten our communication, and learn our youth language so that we can stay abreast of effective communication in the home in terms of what is happening. And that is really true as part of our parenting strategy, because if we continue to do the same old when we are living in changing times, it's just going to become more problematic for parents in terms of their parenting strategies.
Yep. Good point. Good point. That was excellent. Great job, Dr. Benton. Dr. Grace, I know you have somebody else that's coming on. But
Yes, I'll
So,
allow Dr. Bell to introduce our next guest.
right. I want to tell you, Anika Williams actually is an associate clinical psychologist, and she presented at our jam site Northeast regional monthly outreach, public outreach, and believe me, she did such a fantastic job at getting us understanding those online issues, the challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and also the way that parents can help their children navigate it. We saw earlier when there were some videos going around of parents and the humor that was coming out of it in terms of what was happening in terms of online learning. So I want to please bring in for me Anika Williams so that we can actually get some of those tips that she gave us during that wonderful presentation she did for us at the Northeast
Hey, Anika.
Regional Jam site. Hi, Anika.
Hi,
Welcome.
Ramona. Thank you so much. My pleasure to be here with you.
Nice to
Okay,
have you.
great. So I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges that parents are and children are facing currently with this online learning? A, a great shift, you know. What are some of these challenges?
Absolutely, Dr. Bell. It is a great and very unexpected shift. And parents have been basically thrusted into a new space that many parents did not foresee themselves getting into to begin with. And as such, it took some adjusting. As parents, we're all at different levels. Some parents have managed to adjust perhaps a little better than others, and so on. But the challenges exist because our children are now in an online learning space predominantly. They have moved from the face-to-face interaction that they would normally have in their schools and classrooms to an online space. As a result of this, Dr. Bell, you find that parents now, as it relates to parenting, has changed somewhat. So during the hours, the regular school hours, parents are also responsible for monitoring and supporting their children within the home space as well. As was discussed earlier when Dr. Benton was presenting, there is a shift. So normally parents would have their children at school and the school administration, teachers, auxiliary staff, and so on would largely have had the responsibility of monitoring children during this time. And some of the other challenges that exist not only affects parents, but us all. Technology. Sometimes devices don't work. I learned the hard way that the Amazon Prime tablet that my son, one of my children have, is not compatible with Google Meet. And so we had to quickly shift from that device to another device. Additionally, we have challenges as it relates to the internet connection and internet connectivity. So you find that a lot of children, they are not in online classes. Parents and children are frustrated because this minute you have internet, the next minute you don't, right? The internet is also connected to electricity. So when we have power outages, we are oftentimes left without internet. And we know the challenges in terms of affordability of being able to put data service on your phone so that your children can use those devices as well on a consistent basis, or just simply not having a device. Some children rely on a one phone that's in the house. Mommy might need to take it on the road or to work, and several children are depending on one device. So the challenges are many, Dr. Bell.
It
Dr.
is
Bell,
indeed challenging. Now, I know you're a mother of three children,
yes,
a
I am.
13, a 10, and a 1-year-old. And I know that you're also an educator. Now, give us some tips. How do you personally manage online learning for your children, and we want us to share with the with our audience what are some of the things that they can do. What can parents do to help their children navigate this platform and way of
Certainly.
learning?
Thank you so much, Dr. Bell, for that question. Yes, I am a mother of three. I have a child at the primary level and one at the high school level. And so there is a disparity. So even in terms of how I relate with both of them, it's different. I find that you may have to give support, more support to one child or more than one children as opposed to others, depending on their abilities, depending on their age level, depending on their grade level, and so on. But you know, Dr. Bell, at this point in time, parenting as a skill is key. And it shows this period highlights some of the deficiencies as it relates to parenting, which is basically our ability as parents to monitor, supervise, engage, and help to facilitate and develop the emotional, physical, psychological, and cognitive well-being of our children overall. But it's never too late. We're all at different places and it's never too late. So some of the things that we can employ is structure. Structure is key. And given that our children are at home and the structure that school would provide, we no longer have, it's important for us as parents to put that structure in place. So they would have grown accustomed to having a bell ring when it's lunchtime, having a bell ring when it's time to go off to school, or even when there are subject changes. At home now, they don't have that structure in place. And so it is important for us to put that structure in. So we can do this by creating a daily schedule. And once again, it's important that you engage your children in this process. So have them sit with you. Let me see your school timetable. What are you required to do on a daily basis? And put in their routine activities in this schedule as well. So do you read? Have them have a bath before school starts. Maintain the sleep time so that they can wake up on time for classes. You know, help them to understand the importance of the daily schedule and structure. And they're children. So we need to support their efforts. They may make mistakes at times, but we should be there to guide and help them and reinforce the importance. You know, additionally, too, parents sometimes forget that their children are still at school. And online classes and online school is school. Some parents say it's not real school. And that's not healthy to say it for children. Because if you tell your children that it's not real school, then it's a joke. Who want to pay it mind? You know? And sometimes parents may say, guess what? Don't worry about it. When you go back, I'll let you repeat. You know? So it's important for parents that we manage what we say to our children, right? And we mimic the positive attitudes that we want them to follow. You know? Help to guide them. So with this in mind, in the same way that you would provide resources if they were to go out to school, they need the resources at home. They need the same pen, the same pencil, the same notebooks that they will have to write in, and so on and so forth. And we know that they need a little extra now in terms of the Wi-Fi or the data or an electronic device. Workspace. At school, they would have a desk and chair, right? And that's their work area. And you know, some children never, even at school, take it very technical. So how dare somebody sit in their space, you know? But at home, as was mentioned earlier too, we have different home environments. We have different spaces. Some parents have more spaces than others. But what I say to you is make what you have work for you. We need to teach our children to be resilient at this point in time. And the bottom line is that we are imparting life skills. So as adults, we know that we don't always get things the way that we want them to be. And we might have to make the necessary accommodation and shifts and compromises. use what you have to the best of your ability. And as parents, we should support this. So if you know that we have one dining room space that's in the living room and that's where they'll have to use, don't keep walking up and down, back and forth in the video. Don't speak loudly. Don't go on the veranda and shout out to your neighbor or holler to somebody else in the house space. You know, if we are asking them to be resilient and make the accommodations and to use what we have, we should support this. And those are some of the ways that we can support this. So the learning space is also crucial. Management, writing a to-do list, something as simple as that. Because if you're not careful, navigating the online space and online platform can become very difficult, especially for those persons who are not very technologically savvy.
Anika,
yes, my dear.
I wanna stop you there because you're dropping a whole bucket load of, bombshell, major. These points that you're making, they are straight, right on point. Talk to a parent like myself who I'm not a checklist person. Routines, I have a difficulty conforming to routines. It's just my natural personality. Do you have any recommendations in terms of, because the technology helps. I find the technology to be helpful because I'm like that for the children. Do you have any ideas about some of the creative ways that a parent can help their child to stay on task if they're not naturally built to actually do the checklist and the to-do list and so on? And I'm talking about the discipline of getting up every day and writing a checklist and then checking things off one by one. Do you have any creative ways that they can do that?
Sure. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, Shanake, as well too, because everybody functions differently. Mm-hmm. So for some individuals, you might have your to-do list or your checklist in your mind and you're able to follow.
Mental checklist.
Maybe you don't need to put it on paper, but you're able to follow it, right?
Because you're still doing it, Shanake, anyway.
Yes, and sometimes we say we don't have structure, but the routine that we have created is the structure and the schedule, and so, and Shanake, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And I understand because parenting doesn't start now. It starts at birth. And as such, you would have established certain routines, you would have established certain practices and stuff over time that your family has grown accustomed to. I would not have necessarily necessitated that you put it down. You understand me? Mm-hmm. But for some individuals, it's new. It's new, and they may need to start from an actual schedule and checklist, right?
Got it.
If you're functioning, because what we aim for is functionality. If you
I love that. I love that. I love what you just said, because that speaks to the practicality of how you plan your days.
Yes.
Sometimes when I read some of the blogs, I don't know if you go on these mom blogs, but sometimes I go on there and then I just live a very guilty life for the rest of that day, because I'll just resign myself to the fact that I'm failing at this parenting thing, because there are people out there that really are on top of things. And sometimes when you look at their style and you compare yourselves to them, I think that that's also something that you have to be mindful of as well. Not comparing your style to somebody else's, as opposed to creating what works for your family culture and making sure that you work through that as well.
Absolutely. Functionality.
With the reality and the resources that you have access.
Yeah.
It is said that successful parenting is not about achieving perfection. It doesn't mean that you don't seek towards, work towards that either. But it is setting the standards, setting high standards, and setting your goals and working towards reaching them. So we have to realize that. And I like the fact that you are being very practical. Think of parents who can't even read. parents who don't understand anything that their children are doing. And some of them, the only thing that they know about a gadget is how to say, press the send button, hello, how are you? And they have
Yes.
no knowledge of what else to do. And so if the child go to them, you would hear, Pitney, go ask your brother or go ask your sister or call your teacher because they absolutely do not know what to do. So we are reaching out to those parents tonight to say one of the things that they can also do is to start learning the skill and going to a heart or the churches or the schools could arrange some seminars and sessions for those parents to help them to understand about the gadgets and how they use them.
You know, I appreciate that point that you make, because for me, it takes a community effort. And I'm talking about daddy, teacher, um, even some family members like yourself, Auntie Grace, that I would reach out to, and so on. It takes a village. And I think it's very important for us to embrace the village during this period so that we can get the assistance and support that we need. If you are struggling, like for me personally, there are things that I definitely have to be more um, involved and engaged in the process of reaching out to the teachers, especially whenever I'm having challenges with certain assignments that have been given and so on, because the way I was taught certain things is not how it's being taught right now. And so I'm doing fourth grade math, and I've actually, I think I did pretty well at business and economic calculus and all of these things. I have in a first degree, and I'm still struggling with fourth grade math. My daughter actually looked at me the other day and said, "Mommy, you're not that smart." But I've had to resign myself to the fact that, look, I have to reach out and get help, go to the right sources and recognize and understand that I'm not in this alone, and I can rely on my support system and network to help me to get through. It doesn't have to be the fact that a person may be illiterate or whatever, but me personally, I think I did pretty well in school, but I still struggle with some of the assignments that our my children have. So I definitely agree
Yes.
with that.
And again, this is a space where we appreciate the openness. And Dr. Bell, you would also agree that in your practice, you would see persons who are there who are frustrated about simple things. And one of the things that we need to learn is that asking for help is not because we are weak, but it's because we want to remain strong and to get stronger and to get better at what we do. So, Miss Williams, you would also would have seen in different settings where families are struggling. How and this may sound it is a joke, but I had gone to a place to preach, Miss Williams, some months before COVID, and my sister was with me, and we had lunch at a certain place. And when we were back at the church in the afternoon, she recognized that she left her tablet at the house. So somebody left the church, went back to the house, searching for the tablet, and then they called and said, "Me can't find the medication." That was a few months before COVID.
That,
They're looking for a tablet. Me can't find the medication. So even when Dr. Benton spoke
that's a good
earlier,
one, Doc. That's a
and
good one.
Miss Williams, you also mentioned the language is different. It is changing, and so we have to come up, live up be relevant then. Be relevant. Not wanting
Yes.
to take too much of the specialist moment because so I'm gonna ask Dr. Bell, could you continue and see where we get from here with this
So
conversation
are there
again.
other resources, other tips that you have?
Yes. So, Dr. Bell, I would support and endorse what Shanake and Dr. Grace have said because it's a partnership, and as a part of responsible parenting, it necessitates that we recognize when we don't have all the answers, we don't know what it is to do. Go in search of it. Go in search of it. Sometimes persons are around you and you see them carrying out tasks or have a better understanding than you ask. Some of our neighbors are in a better position, and teachers are willing. Partnership with the schools. In the same way that if you had face to face, you would go by the school to find out how your child is doing. Most of these schools, there are WhatsApp groups that parents are a part of as well, right? So you have access to the teacher. Now we have greater access to teachers than we have ever had before, right? Utilize it. They're actually waiting on us to come and ask them for help. So as much as is possible, partner with the schools, form teacher, principals, your neighbor, whoever in your space, other family members who can assist. It's a part of our role as parents to seek help when we don't have the answers. It doesn't make us incompetent. It doesn't make us weak. We are stronger for it because we are benefiting. Right? So it's absolutely important. Another key aspect is for us to realize that our children have been affected in a similar way as parents have been affected. You know, sometimes we make it about the parents alone, but really and truly, our children too have been thrusted into a new space. And as was mentioned, the same devices that they used to use for entertainment alone is now a tool for school. So when I say to my older son, and I say to him, okay, guess what? We need to cut the screen time. And he says, Mommy, can I cut it during school time? Because I'm on the device for the entire day, and you say absolutely nothing to me, and you have no problem with me being on it for the entire day. And now here it is. He says, can we cut it during school time and not after school time? And so the bottom line is that they too feel as if their space has been infringed upon. You know, so we too have to understand, and they too become frustrated when the internet is constantly down, or teacher saying assignment must come in and they don't have the device. You understand? So we as parents have to listen, and we have to encourage, we have to support. And once again, if it is we realize that our children have special learning challenges or they're experiencing emotional difficulty, reach out. Don't wait until it's too late. If you are unable to assist, seek the assistance. It is essential, very essential. So we have to focus on their well-being. And parents, the bottom line is if you're not well, we can't help our children as best as we can. So we need to take some time for ourselves as well too. We need to ensure that we engage in self-care. It can be as simple as sometimes just walking outside and looking around and taking a deep breath. Sometimes you just need that one little break. It can be as simple as sometimes even right before you go to bed, when it is still and the children are asleep, you do something for yourself. You know, you play a game or you read a book or you take a day, whatever it is that self-care looks like for yourself. It's important that we engage in that. And overall, I would say get in the know. Get in the know. Find out how you navigate the Google Classroom space. When I hear parents say that they don't know the password or their child's email addresses, the ministry email address or the Google Classroom, it's not a secret. Parents need to know. We all need to know. And sometimes it is a space where you can get even closer with your children, right? Sometimes I laugh at my son, you know, when he carries the device and he said, Mommy, this is how you can know if assignments are missing. And deep down in myself, I'm like, oh, this child is crazy. You should know I can know if assignments missing. But the bottom line is it's important. We need to be in the know. So if it is that we ask them to show us, or if they too are having challenges, reach out to the schools, ask guidance counselors. They have resource persons who are willing to help us. It is absolutely key. We have a responsibility. We are humans. They are humans. We have to work together to get what we need to get done. Their future depends on how we navigate this time. It's important.
Appreciate. Thank you.
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
Listen, Anika, you have this thing on lock and key. And
Lock the key. I tell you.
no,
Yeah.
it's true. I
So
mean, I cannot disagree with anything that you say. And one of the most important things that you talk about is the structure that the kids actually need it. Sometimes we shy away from it because we think it's, this rigidity and so on. And the kids, sometimes they may resist it, but they need it. And I appreciate you sharing that. Excellent.
So that lack of structure many times is what really cause those psychological issues
exactly.
because they are out of balance, and being out of balance mean that you will end up with some kind of depression or anxiety issues when you don't have that structure. You get up when you want, you don't engage yourself in certain activities, which would be what you would be doing if you were going to regular school. And this
Right.
is why, really, right now in my private practice and at the clinic, we're now seeing a lot of children coming in with sleep issues because they're awake at night and asleep during the daytime. And that's because of a lack of structure.
Right. And
That's a lack of structure.
another thing, Dr. Bell, with structure comes equally focus. They need to learn to focus and stay focused on a task, complete that task, and then move, shift. Not that you can't multitask, but focus is also another issue.
And I'm
Um,
gonna have to push in mindfulness that we
of
teach the
course,
kids
of
mindfulness.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. While we are preparing for speak up segment, I think we went over into that. I'm not sure, Shauna, what you're seeing out there. There are questions, but I know that some persons usually watch the replay. But if you are watching now and you have your question, this is the time that we will share. We are going to bring back Dr. Benton so we can have a summary and share, and Dr. Benton and Miss Williams, we usually ask her to share one empowering statement, something to empower our target audience. Today will be our parents that would want to leave an impact on their mind. Now, are there questions or comments, Shauna, that are there to be highlighted?
I think the one question that was there, Anika answered it. So we're pretty good on the speak up segment, but we still invite our viewing audience. If you're on now, I see that there are 15 of you on here. If you can, just go ahead and post those questions in the chat. Well, while we have the experts here, guys, everyone on here except me can answer a question that you may have. And probably I may just be able to answer because I'm a parent. But make use of the opportunity right now, guys, that you have to get the tools and the techniques that you need in order to survive this crisis.
Shona, can you ask back the question and see if we can punch it in, please?
Yeah, so this particular question had to do with the screen time. School has taken over the screen time. So they're asked, this parent, Roxanne here, was asking, how do you manage the screen time since the school has taken it over? And I think Anika, you did a masterful job of answering that, but I don't know if you want to just reiterate.
Okay, certainly. The bottom line is that we don't want our children to always be on the gadgets. So there are other things in their day-to-day lives that are important. So we should push also for physical activity. Bring our children outside. Let them kick a ball. You kick the ball with them as well, right? It's strange and funny too that we can't move away so much from the screen time after class either. So even if we give them breaks, we can have as Dr. Betton alluded to earlier, through conversation with our children, negotiate additional time. Because guess what? The interaction that they would have had normally at school with their friends, that too has been brought online. So when will they interact with their friends? And of course, parents, we know that we have to monitor and supervise that interaction because they're very technologically savvy and the online space can be very dangerous.
Yes.
So right, so we have to encourage the socialization, because if being physically distant doesn't mean that we have to be socially distant as well. So it's all about managing and regulating. Balance is what is key. It's not an all or nothing kind of situation, I believe.
I
At
love
this.
it. Excellent. Excellent. And, you know, we talk about outside, and we do have Americans watching. During the winter time, some of them struggle with going outside because it's so cold out. But there are things that you can also do inside as well that engages them physical as well. Yes.
And
Appreciate
that's
that.
where the structure comes in too, because some parents, because they are not actively going out, you can have a movie night and make popcorns, just like how you would want to go to a movie. You could have games night. All of these are different nights that you could have for different things, so that that entertainment part of the child's life is still there and making it really fun. You could have a treasure hunt in the home.
So
You
the
know,
encourage the movement.
yeah, from movements. It really, you could be doing a whole lot, still keeping that structure in place and helping the children to stay mentally well.
Yes, so we are talking about the impact of COVID and effective parenting during a pandemic. And I believe so far we have had an excellent conversation. And if you are just joining, watching the replay, I hope that it would have been beneficial for you. And if you are still here with us, we thank you for sharing, and we would appreciate you making your comments either way. Dr. Benton, is there any one thing that you have thought of that you would want to share with our parents now?
Yeah. Yes. Thanks, God. Um, Interesting conversations. And the question, I think Anna Kay would have dealt so well with it, because parents really asking more and more about the screen time and how we get. But if we do try to engage them some more, interacting with them. One of the things that the COVID did, as it relates to the parenting, it would have removed this social distancing and isolation, would have removed the power of touch, that kind of interaction. So because we are spending more time in the same space, um, rather than creating further isolation so that they are on their own with their device and using up more screen time, which is the blue light and the screen and all of that impacting on the eyes. If we interact more while we keep our distance, card games, board games, things like those. And I'm also saying, in addition to that, as a skill going forward, that parents do not be afraid to learn from the kids. They can teach us. We said teach us a thing or two. They can teach us many things. And it's an environment now. Years ago when I was in primary school, 10 years ago, the story in this book, A New Way to Fish. And when COVID came in, that came back to my thoughts. A new way to fish. It was a story about this bear. It was animals involved, and the bear, I guess he saw these other animals with fish, and bears like fish, so he wanted to find out how they got so much. And they told him that he should go down to the river when it's on the ice, dig a hole in the ice and sit there. And every time he would feel something, bite on his tail, he should count because he would be catching fish. So I guess each bite would motivate him. Yes, that's one, that's two, that's three, and he went to fish. But then eventually, when there was no more, and he got up, turned around, his tail was gone, right? But we don't have
Oh,
to. Yes, his tail was gone. A new way to fish. That was the title of the story. But we don't have to lose our tails in COVID because COVID brought with it creativity. I'm seeing where students have become much more creative and teachers too. For the life of me, the lessons have become much more interesting. They can share their videos, they can go to wherever and get the latest things to show, and the students are just there. So it brings the creativity, and we need to use that to build into our family time, build into our interaction. And as Sudan spoke about she spoke about the structure. If the social structure is weak, then the other structures are going to be they're not going to be there because the social structure is the base, is the foundation on which the other things are going to be built. So we need to create strong social structure, create some bond. Sociology is about interacting with your environment, interacting with people. We are social animals. So we need to have strong social bonds in order to have the emotional things in place and the other things in place. COVID was about our health, and because it brings the health issue, then our response to change and to the things that we have to do was more drastic. Right. Usually, if it was something that never affected our health, we would not have responded so quickly. But the response is quick and drastic because years ago I would only see people when you're watching news, international news, you would see people in China with masks, and that was long. And I was like, "Oh, these people going to work in masks?" But no, you're going through the door. I'm saying to my husband, "You carry your mask, you forget your mask, or in the vehicle." I remember one day I went by Ministry of Education. I wanted to go and get something done for school. When I drove in, Dr. Kelly, I know they weren't even going to let me near the building without mask. I didn't have my mask. I searched through the car frantically in the pockets, couldn't find. And I stood outside there until I saw a car drove in and I watched the lady park and everything. And I swallowed my pride and I went up to her and I said, "Do you by chance have an extra mask?" And
Yeah, I
she
laughed at that.
yeah,
Brittany.
you
I
know,
appreciate you sharing that because first time you walk into a bank in a mass and then you'll see the police and everybody coming after you. No, you dare not go in without your mask.
without it, I had to wait
Really,
and that lady to go into the back
really
of
an
her
interesting
car.
time.
Right, and get it. So a number of things we have to embrace the change, and particularly as it's a health issue, it is socially it destroy impact the population, our death rate, everything seems to be
Mhm.
going up and skyrocketing and so on and so forth. So it brings a whole lot of things. So the social demographic thing is no different, very much, very different. So we have to embrace the change. We have, as we said, we have to make, we have to become flexible. I like that
Right.
term in terms of
Mhm.
making the adjustment. We must be flexible in what we do.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. Benton. It seems as if we may have to have a part two on sociological change for COVID because there's so much to on earth, and discuss. So I really value that addition to the conversation. I'm seeing something on the screen, Shauna. Can you read it? Is
Yes,
it a
that's why
question?
I'm here. That's why I'm here. I'm here to read all the questions because I know some of us are a little bit more challenged.
Please.
This question really centers in on one of the things that I was struggling with. It's talking about a child not adjusting well to online learning because that face-to-face and intimate interaction, and children learn from other children too. How does a parent deal with that kind of a situation? That's the question that's been asked here. I know for me, and I know the experts can answer that, but I had a personal situation with that in math for one of my children. And I have been able to secure the services of a tutor who was able to help her one-on-one on the same online platform, but after school for 1 hour per week. And that has, I mean, listen, let me tell you something. That girl is amazing. She's going to university right now, but she actually does an assessment with her, did an assessment with her to check her her level where she was. And my daughter is doing so well in math right now. And so I really believe that there are ways and creative ways that you can do that. But if anybody else has any suggestion on how to answer that, then I'll ask you to do that at this time.
If I may just
If you may,
I want to go first.
sure, I can.
All right.
I was saying that you would have to identify firstly what the challenge is, because not all children who are having difficulty adjusting to the online classroom platform have the exact same challenge. You understand? So some children may be having emotional challenges in the sense that they are not with their classmates and they can't get to interact with them as they would in class. For some children, it may be more of a learning challenge, and it may require, as you mentioned, Shauna K, additional support. So I think that in order to assist our children in the best way possible, we would first need to determine what's the nature of the challenge that they are experiencing, so that we can tailor whatever response we're given to meet their specific needs. And sometimes that may require us having a conversation with their teacher or the school's guidance counselor so that we can know what other additional steps to take. Sometimes it may even be a challenge within the classroom space. So sometimes mommy is over me and I don't want mommy to be over me. I'm in school. You know what I mean? That sort of a thing. So we would first need to ascertain, what's the true nature of the situation so that we can assist with that challenge.
And might I add, if you try the guidance counselor, the teacher, and there is no possible answer, the clinical psychologist and all of those specialists on the external, realm, like Dr. Bell and others, you may need to do, and you may need to take a visit and have a proper diagnosis so that the child can be treated. And something like dyslexia, if you're like me and you're tall, I don't just not read the questions that are on the screen because I don't have on my glasses, but I'm dyslexic and I will read backwards. So those are challenges. And friends, it is an awesome opportunity we have tonight to educate and support. And we appreciate what you have done. We are bordering on time now. And unless there is a critical question that has come in, Shauna, we may go to the wrap-up segment.
Yes, I think we can go ahead. We have pretty much exhausted the questions.
All right, wonderful. So, ladies, I almost say ladies and gentlemen, one of these days we'll have some more additional. Would you agree that we have had a wonderful conversation?
Yes, great conversation. Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank you. And for 30 seconds, we are going to ask each of you, starting with our guest first, 30 seconds, just share one power punch for our parents, something you'd like for them to remember.
Well, I'll start because I see that I'm actually the first one here on the screen, on my screen. But
Instead, we're going to start with our guest first. And
30
then
seconds.
Okay, go ahead. That's it.
I'm going to go first. I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
go first.
30
And I'm
seconds.
going to
30 seconds.
my PowerPoint is parents practice discussions instead of arguments. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Miss Williams?
Mine is parents, you are not alone. Seek support.
Thank you.
Is it time
Shauna?
for me to speak now?
Yes.
Okay, well, to be honest with you, throughout this pandemic, we've been hearing all different kinds of things about how to cope and so on. But I just want to say that give yourself some grace, parents. The experts have done, if they've done nothing else tonight, is that they've shared with us that none of us were ever trained on how to parent through a pandemic. So we're learning as we're going along. So give yourself grace when you make mistakes, pick yourself up and just be resilient and move on.
Thank you. Dr. Bell?
Yes, and I'm appealing to the parents to be flexible. We're living in changing times, and if we continue to do things the same old, it's going to be problematic. And there are many ways, as we made mention here tonight. Take some of these tips, incorporate them into your space, and I'm sure that parenting success during COVID-19 will be achieved.
And mine would be something I said earlier. There's no perfection, no perfect way to parent, and there are no perfect children either. And ask for help, not because you are weak, but because you want to remain strong or become stronger. And remember, in all of what you do, God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, because I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will uphold you with the righteous, with my righteous right hand. That's coming from your Father. So today it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this space with my co-host and our guest, Miss Williams, Dr. Gail Betton, Shauna K. Pottinger, and Dr. Pearnel Bell. And this is how we end Let's Talk Life and Legacy, a moment with Dr. Grace, as we say,
Ta-ta!
ta-ta.
Ta-ta!